Physical Description Part 2. RDA 3.4 for extent tells us to record an extent of the manifestation by giving the number of units and the type of unit. It also tells us to use a term from an approved list of carrier types in RDA 3.3.1.3. For books which are considered unmediated because we can experience them directly with the use of our senses of sight or touch, there is a limited number of carrier types in that list, and none of them is pages, which we are used to seeing in a bibliographic description. However, an exception for text, which takes precedence over the overarching instruction for recording the extent of a manifestation, gives us a longer list of carrier types that includes page and refers us to a later instruction. That later instruction tells us to record the extent in terms of the separately numbered groups of pages therein. So if there is a preface or introduction that has pages numbered by Roman numerals, followed by pages numbered by Arabic numerals, we don't add the two numbers together for a total number of pages. We record both. A leaf is a sheet of paper. When content is printed only on one side of a leaf, it is described as such, using the word leaf or leaves as appropriate. A page is printed on one side of a leaf of paper, and when leaves have printed content on both sides, we start to describe the pages instead of the underlying leaves, using page or pages as appropriate. In the case of unnumbered pages or leaves, we can either count them if that is reasonable to do, or estimate the number if counting is not reasonable. The list of acceptable terms are included in RDA 7.15. More on those in the next slides. There are many kinds of illustrative content. On the left are examples of coats of arms, and on the right is a genealogical table. Charts are on the left. Note that charts are meant to represent data in a visual manner, which differs from tables, which include textual data. Charts are considered illustrative content, and tables are not. On the left is an example of a plan. On the right is an example of a plan, which is a detailed drawing or diagram, usually for architecture or land development. Note that portraits on the top left are identified persons that are formal or posed, different from images containing people in a more informal or candid setting. It is important to note that the term photograph is used specifically for a printed photograph that is physically affixed to a page in some way. While many still images began as photographs, those still images that are printed directly onto a page or leaf are generalized as illustrations. When illustrative content is on a leaf or page that is larger than the volume in which it resides, the fact that it is folded is described in the mark 300 subfield A for extent, and the image is described in the mark 300 subfield B for illustrative content. In the event that a book is entirely text and does not contain any illustrative content, leave the mark 300 subfield B out of the descriptive record. And finally, the dimensions are recorded in centimeters in most cases, including books. In most cases, the recorded dimensions only include height, and for books, that is the height of the book as it would stand on a shelf. In the event that the width of a book is greater than the height, both are recorded, starting with height and followed by width. There are other RDA guidelines for different formats of materials. All are listed in RDA 3.5.1.4. There are also best practices for other formats determined by related communities of practice that record dimensions in inches instead. Know that terms such as pages, approximately, and illustrations were abbreviated before RDA. You will encounter some descriptive records that have the abbreviations, and some descriptive records that do not. Also know that the cm per centimeters used to be considered an abbreviation and was followed by the period. It is now considered a symbol and no longer requires the period. Inches, on the other hand, is abbreviated by the in followed by a period, as in alone is a word. This prevents confusion. However, a cm may be followed by a period in the event that the period is actually meant to precede a series title that follows it. In the event that a book is accompanied by another manifestation, such as a book with a related pamphlet or a book with a CD, we add the physical description, following the same format and arrangement. In the first example, the related manifestation is a booklet, which has an extent, illustrative content, and dimensions of its own. Though the Mark 300 field is repeatable, in practice we currently prefer the use of the Mark 300 subfield E. But don't be surprised if the use of multiple Mark 300 fields becomes a common practice as we prepare for moving into a different bibliographic data future. With that first example, both the primary manifestation and the related manifestation have the same type of content, media, and carrier, so the additional Mark fields in the next video will not be repeated. But in the second example, they have different types of content, media, and carrier, so the data in the following video will be different, and the additional Mark fields will be repeated.